Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our open and welcoming community we live our message of love, hope, justice, and joy. We extend a special welcome to our visitors this morning, of whom there are many. Thank you very much. We're glad you're here and invite you to stop by our welcome table after worship in Robinson Lounge, which is just outside the doors, so that we can answer your questions and get to know you a little bit better. Again, welcome to our congregation. We're very happy you've joined us. We have one announcement this morning. This is from the Rainbow Ministry. Come beat the heat with Rainbow Ministry at their annual summer picnic. Our friends at the Baird Rustin Center are graciously hosting us for a potluck at their space on 12 Stockton Street, Princeton, and that is on Sunday, August 17th from 12 to 3. Please feel free to bring any meat-free items that you like, hang out with your friends in the congregation, and check out the Baird Rustin Center's mission. You can talk to Suzanne Appel or Veronique Uman for questions. And now we will light our chalice. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. Rosalind Carter. Let us recite our unison affirmation as it appears in your order of service. This is a congregation of open minds, of helping hands, and of loving hearts. Together we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in the world. And now let us enter a time of meditation. Settle into your seat. Bring your awareness to your breath. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Move your mind now to a time that was difficult for you. A time when you needed support. Perhaps you needed or need care. Perhaps you were or are a caregiver. Who was in your circle of care? What people were there for you? Perhaps there was a special animal that provided comfort, or a location. Was spirit or love or grace or God present during that time? Was a community present for you? Who listened to you during this time? If you didn't have enough support, how were you present for yourself? If you wish, thank those who supported you for doing the best they could. Wrap them in love and gently let them go as you bring your attention to the room where you are safe, you are welcome, and you are loved. Deep in the summer season, many of our worship associates are taking a well-deserved break. And I thank Emma, Sue, and Reverend Jennifer for your participation and support today. So because we don't have a worship associate, we'll be hearing some thoughts on caregiving from Henri Nouwen, a Dutch Catholic priest, writer, theologian, and psychologist. He was a professor who later left academia to become the pastor and a caregiver at L'Arche Daybreak, a community for people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities. And these are his words. The word compassion means to suffer with. Compassion asks us to go where it hurts, to enter places of pain, to share in brokenness, fear, confusion, and anguish. Joy is hidden in compassion. It seems quite unlikely that suffering with another person would bring joy, yet being with a person in pain, offering simple presence to someone in despair, sharing with a friend in times of confusion and uncertainty, such experiences can bring us deep joy. Not happiness, not excitement, not great satisfaction, but the quiet joy of being there for someone else and living in deep solidarity with our siblings in this human family. There is no pause to transition between people, so I'm adding silence. Now we turn to our offering, which is our time each week to come together and support the many ministries, programs, and outreach efforts of our congregation. All that we offer one another and the world comes into being because of how we practice generosity through our annual pledges and passing of the plate each week. Let us join together in gratitude and with generous hearts as we create our weekly offering. If you are visiting today, please feel free to let the basket pass you by. Many years ago, early in my process of discernment, which is the term for deciding if ministry is the right path for you, I was working as an event producer on a project in Las Vegas. I love Vegas, but it's not known for being a hotbed of spiritual growth. On the first morning of the setup, I went out for a walk. Foot traffic was being diverted in front of my hotel because EMTs were performing CPR. The person they were working on was an unhoused man with gray curly hair I had seen around the day before. I was distressed by the sight of it. I had never seen CPR being performed before, and I was concerned for the man. As I returned from my walk, the sidewalk was still blocked because I'm sorry to say the man had died, and the police were now investigating. As I was in discernment, I asked myself, if I were a UU minister, what would I be able to offer that man or his friends who were watching or the first responders? I had no words to make them feel better. I couldn't honestly tell them he was going to a better place. What do I know? I could not think of anything I would be able to offer if I were a minister. What I did offer from a distance were my prayers, and even that I wasn't completely comfortable with at the time. I prayed that the first responders had people at home who cared about them. I prayed that the unhoused men watching the event transpire had people who cared about them. And I prayed that the unhoused man with gray curly hair had known in some way that he was cared about. Later, I discerned that ministry was my path, and I started the process of education and formation that I'm in now. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, I just completed the extended year program of Clinical Pastoral Education, also called CPE, at Robert Wood Johnson in New Brunswick. CPE is a training program to learn how to be a chaplain. A chaplain provides spiritual care to folks out in the world, in prisons, universities, nursing homes, and in my case, at a hospital. All these years later, I learned in CPE what I might have done if I were a chaplain passing by the events in Las Vegas. I would have done exactly the same thing, follow the instructions of the first responders by clearing a wide path and not interfering. But I also know how I might have helped them if I were a chaplain called on to assist them after the fact. Chaplains help by listening. That's not the only thing they do, but it is foundational. And it is a learned skill to listen without interruption, without sharing that time that something similar happened to you, without trying to fill in the pauses, without trying to fix the problem or make the other person feel better or convince them that everything is going to be okay. It's a skill, the ability to listen in that way, and it's a spiritual discipline based in love and compassion. It's not easy. It may be the hardest to do with people that we know and love. We know them so well, and we know exactly what they are doing wrong. If only they would listen to us. Last week, Pauline Nyjander, a member of UUCP and a recent MDiv graduate, preached in more depth about listening from a place of love. Her excellent sermon is available on our YouTube channel if you would like to explore the subject of listening a little bit more. UUs can listen just as well as anyone else. While we may not share a central story, a creed about why bad things happen or what happens after we die, we do have shared values that help us to be good actors in the world. Usually we think about our principles and values as guidance for concerns at the social level, but I thought it would be interesting to explore with you how they influence providing one-on-one spiritual care out in the world. We are now entering the educational portion of this sermon. let's take a second to define some terms. We'll start with defining our shared values. For visitors or newcomers, this will perhaps be an introduction. Our UU shared values are justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. All of those values are centered in love because it matters how we live them out, not just that we live them out. Today we're going to focus on how pluralism, equity, and interdependence show up in spiritual care. Next item, what is spiritual care? Spiritual care refers to the support we give to people. Sorry, I know my P's are popping here, sorry. It refers to the support we give to people often when they are in distress of some sort. That care is related to meaning and purpose in their lives and their interconnectedness to others, nature, and the significant or the sacred. As hospital chaplains, we live out the values of pluralism and equity by caring and advocating for anyone who needs us. The UU value of pluralism means that we believe we are all sacred beings, coming from diverse cultures, identities, experiences, and theologies. Our value of equity means that we believe all are inherently worthy and have the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. Hospitals are great equalizers, and there are opportunities to care for people of many races and religions or none, the disabled, the mentally ill, and immigrants. When I first started at the hospital, I thought I was going to be having deep theological conversations every day, meeting with people from many races, ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds, identities, and religions, and providing culturally sensitive care and rituals. I thought it was going to be like the UN of healthcare. Mostly, I met lovely Catholics and Christians. Many were Spanish-speaking. I only met 3 UUs. I met an occasional Muslim or Hindu, and a few more Jewish people. I didn't have the opportunity to work with any trans or non-binary people. There are probably many reasons for that. Chaplaincy is a Christian concept. Robert Wood Johnson has accommodations for Muslims and also for Orthodox Jews, but many non-Christians believe the chaplains are not there for them. That is a quote that I heard multiple times. Many people, including trans folks, may also believe that chaplains are going to judge them or try to convert them to Christianity, so they prefer not to have chaplain visits. But that is not the point of spiritual care, and it mostly doesn't happen at Robert Wood Johnson, at least it shouldn't. While some folks avoid spiritual care, Christians, and particularly Catholics, seek it out. Catholics mark significant events in life through the sacraments, and illness is one of those events. In order to receive what used to be called extreme unction and is now called anointing of the sick by the priest, they first have to see a chaplain. And often they're happy to pray and talk with us as well. One of the reasons I felt comfortable when I found Unitarian Universalism as a thinker and a questioner was that our lack of dogma allows for what we call a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And since I was a child, I have thought about the nature of God and the meaning of life. However, the first moment I encountered a patient on my own, I realized that none of the theological philosophizing I had done through my whole life mattered at all. Standing in front of that patient in her hospital bed, I saw all the neurons in my head light up and go out. I had nothing to say to her. But all that mattered to that patient was that someone was there, someone to share their concerns with. Like Amos McGee in the beautiful story that Reverend Jennifer shared this morning, we assess what each being needs. And for this person, an Our Father, a prayer I learned when I was 7 years old in Catholic catechism, provided comfort. Prayer is not a largely shared aspect of Unitarian Universalism, which may be a lack for us. I have found the Our Father in particular and prayer in general to be an important part of working in the hospital, and I have a new appreciation for its significance in many people's lives. The Our Father is a comfort to the devout. It is a remaining connection to the holy for some whose lives have brought them through pain and separation. At the bedside of a dying loved one, they can still recite it, or most of it, and be part of that important moment. Because I speak a little Spanish, I think I said the Padre Nuestro almost as much as I said the Our Father. As part of my training, I interviewed a Muslim chaplain/imam who generously shared a white paper he had written about how to care for Muslims in the hospital. While I had it for reference, I couldn't remember it all, and I didn't meet many Muslim patients. But I did meet a few Hindus, and I used the most basic element of what the Imam taught me when meeting them. Many times when a person isn't interested in talking to the chaplain, they will politely say, "I'm fine, thanks," but you can tell by their facial expression and body language that they aren't fine, they just don't want to talk to you. My goal was to extend my conversation with those folks by maybe 10 seconds, just to see if I could break the ice a little bit. And if not, I would leave. Mostly I would ask how long they'd been in the hospital or where they lived, low-stakes questions that would often relax them and lead us into longer conversations. One day I went into the room of a Hindu patient who was there with his grown children. I got the "we're fine, thanks" when I introduced myself as being from spiritual care, careful not to use the word chaplain as the Imam instructed me. Then, knowing they were Hindu from their chart and using the tool the Imam gave me, I said, "You're Hindu, right? Does your dad have everything he needs for his practice?" They visibly relaxed and smiled and started to tell me how they had gotten him set up with his online group and how much he prays. That day I felt like I made a difference by acknowledging them in the fullness of who they were, and I was very grateful to the Imam for giving me the tool of just asking if the person has what they need. I used it many times after this, and it never failed to break down barriers. Sometimes people didn't want to talk to me because I wasn't Christian, and other times they didn't want to talk to me because they assumed I was Christian. I went into one room, and the patient in the first bed was Baptist, and she was interested in a brief prayer. When I went to the patient in the second bed, she very adamantly said, "You've got the wrong person." She basically kicked me out, saying indirectly her spirituality is not the same as mine, and she wanted nothing to do with it, but it really wasn't clear exactly what she was saying. So standing in the hallway outside the room, I was trying to figure out what had just happened. I think she assumed something about my spirituality because she heard me pray with the first patient. My guess, and I don't know this for sure, is that she was pagan. I really wanted to go back in and talk to her about it and kind of stand up for myself a little bit and say, some of my best friends are pagan. Because I was being painted with the wrong brush. But I didn't go back. She told me that she didn't want to talk to me. To go back in would have been for my benefit, not hers. But I really wished I'd had an opportunity to talk to her. So support of pluralism and equity are built into good chaplaincy practice. Caregiving as a chaplain or in our everyday lives is also an expression of interdependence, honoring the interdependent web of all existence. We generally think of this value as related to our duty to care for nature and the human and non-human creatures with whom we are interconnected. Sometimes, in my experience, we are also influenced by our interconnectedness with something greater than ourselves. This is one of the most significant understandings of my chaplaincy training. Before my husband passed, I was interested but skeptical when people would tell me stories about events that happened to them that were hard to explain. Serendipitous encounters, finding things that had been lost, etc. They are fun to hear about, but I could always see just how that unusual event could have taken place without any type of a divine intervention. Sort of like the king with the goose that laid the golden eggs. Our logical minds can make scrambled eggs of golden mysteries. Because of some of experiences since my husband passed, I now believe our existence is much more than it appears. I'm sort of a rational and pragmatic person, and I think I can control everything. So I'm a little hesitant to share some of this experience where I think something else was in control. One thing I've learned in my formation as a minister is that some messages are meaningful only to the recipient. That doesn't make them false, it just makes them specific to the person, the time, and the place. And deep examination by our verbal, rational left brain can overpower the more subtle awareness of our right brain, which is the part that maintains our connection to the ineffable. But despite my hesitation, I'm going to share them because they were transformative to me. Many times I was put in a place that I had no intention of going because I needed to be there, and by put, I mean that I went, for no planned reason or requirement of my tasks, to a place I would not have been otherwise. One Saturday night, I had to turn off the Sabbath elevator, which stops at every floor from Friday night to Saturday night so that Orthodox Jewish people can visit patients without pushing the buttons. I was just there to turn a key, but I decided to get on the elevator to say goodnight to a patient I had seen earlier in the day. The other person in the elevator dropped their driver's license and I picked it up. She was a young Spanish-speaking woman with a newborn in the NICU. We started chatting. I went to see the baby and I prayed with the mother. She told me through tears that she thought it was meant to be that we met. She was alone in the US and was very lonely that night and wasn't sure how she was going to manage another night in the NICU. I went back a few times to see her later, but I never saw her again. Other chaplains at the hospital knew her, but we were put in each other's paths that one time for a purpose, I believe. Another time I was going to enter a patient room, but the woman was standing up, plugging in her cell phone, and I thought, she looks fine. She doesn't need to see me. But as I turned to go, something said to me, no, go in there. So I did. She wasn't that interested in having a visitor, but I broke the ice a bit, and it turns out she was waiting for her doctor to give her a plan of care. She had aggressive cancer in one organ, but an infection in another, and she couldn't begin treatment until the infection was resolved. The delay in her cancer treatment was a scary prospect. She warmed up, and I think those few minutes of connection, support, talking about American Idol, and frankly, distraction made a difference in her day. But the most unusual occurrence was on a Sunday night in December. The on-call phone was very quiet, and I wanted to pass the time more quickly. So I asked our priest if I could shadow him as he visited patients to provide communion and anointing. He kindly said yes. So I was traipsing around the whole hospital following him in places I had never been before. Due to a very unusual series of events I won't bore you with, I separated from the priest and ended up in a room where the wife of the patient was telling me very forcefully, we don't need spiritual care, we're fine, thank you, we're fine. But despite her mask, I recognized her. It was my second grade teacher. I had not seen her in decades. That blows my mind even now. There was no way I would have gone into that room that night except by a series of odd happenings. I believe I was put there to actually reconnect her at her request with a mutual family friend that she hadn't seen in a couple of years. The way these moments come about aren't like bolts of lightning. They are just choices, but they are choices that don't always make sense. Only in retrospect can I see that something else, call it what you will, was at play in these circumstances. It is a beautiful and unexpected gift of my time in CPE. I want to wrap up this story about the man with the gray curly hair in Vegas. If you remember, I prayed that he had known he was cared for before he passed. Later that afternoon, I ran into a friend of mine who was also working at this event. I mentioned to her that I had seen her that morning. I had mentioned to her what I had seen that morning. She said, I know, there are so many homeless people in Vegas. I saw one man this morning outside the pharmacy. I said hello and asked if he was okay. He said he was so hungry that he had a pain in his stomach. So I went back inside and got him something to eat. I asked her what the man looked like. She said he had gray curly hair. While I was worried about what special words I would say to help, she said, how are you? She was present, she listened, and she cared. At the end of our hour, we extinguish our chalice, knowing that its light carries us until we gather again. This benediction is one I frequently used in the hospital. It's based on a prayer called Aaron's Blessing, and it has been modified to suit this audience. May the Spirit of life bless and keep you. May the Spirit of love shine through you and be gracious unto you. May the love at the center of our faith bring you peace. Blessed be, may it be so, and amen.